All right, here we go. Everybody, welcome to the first episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. We're gonna have some fun with this. So I am Brad, also known as Isekai Sensei-Sama, and I am joined by the Weeb Club, Andrew, Kermit D. Grog.
Hello, yes, I'm Andrew, or Kermit for short.
And Ben, also known as Bento or Benbo.
Hajimemashite.
Okay, I guess we're doing that. So we have been doing our little Weeb Club for, probably over 2 years now. And
more than that even.
Yeah, we get together and we watch anime and we talk about manga that we're reading, and we've had such a fun time doing that for a while now, and we have such good conversations that we decided we should do a podcast about it. So here we are.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Let's do it. Let's anime.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the intro, we have really good conversations about the things we read and the things we watch. And so we wanted to put that out there into the world and lock those conversations down, as it were, in perpetuity.
Let you listen in on our endless anime ramblings.
I'm still very attached to the idea that I was just recently pushed in front of a train and I woke up right here with a microphone in front of my face and a loose outline of what I need to talk about.
It's a good thing you've retained all of your knowledge from your past life.
Yes. So I have all my anime knowledge, so I'm prepared to do this podcast.
The same world. Thank goodness it's the same world. If it was a different world, the anime would be different. We wouldn't know what we were talking about.
It might not even have anime. Can you imagine?
So there's this show called Dragon Ball. It's kind of the most important thing that ever happened.
Big
I don't know what that
facts.
is.
So the topic that I've picked out for today, out of our list of many, many topics that we will have endless amount of podcast episodes for, it's a topic that we've talked a little bit about before, but I thought it would be a good thing to explore given the differences in our opinions on, or rather the way we enjoy certain things. And that is how the art style of an anime or manga affects your enjoyment of it. And Andrew, I know this is one that you feel very strongly about, and we have somewhat of a different opinion on that.
Putting it lightly, yes.
So just to lay a baseline for myself here, my level at which my enjoyment of anime or manga is affected by the art style, the bar for that is very, very low. So I will say there are manga that I've started to read and the art was so bad that I was like, I can't do this. But it has to be real bad for that to happen. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you feel?
I feel almost the exact opposite. A style for an anime or a manga can grab me in entirely, and something that it's not like a measurement between bad and good. I feel like the measurement is more generic and interesting. Even just the subtlety of this artist draws kind of faces in their own little way, that you can kind of see that, and not just I learned this from a how to draw manga book. Because there's just something about that's why I'm into anime and manga. It's the visuals of it. A cartoon. This does not look like life. It can be vibrant. Things can look weird, and there's just some part of that makes something more intriguing, that it looks different. If it looks too I guess it's very much judge a book by its cover, and sometimes that can do a lot of good, and sometimes I can miss something that's probably really good because it's this looks like everything else, I'm going to skip it. But I feel like that also lets me get in on things that other people might go, ooh, this doesn't look good at all, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, there's nothing else that looks like this. Novelty and appearance is always very important to me. The one that jumps to my head the most, that I don't think I've seen anyone that I know ever talk about or reference, is I believe it's called Ping Pong the Animation. It's 10 episodes. I want to say it came about about a decade ago, and just about these kids playing ping pong in high school. And it's relatively mundane, and if it was any other sports anime or cute girls doing XYZ, it'd be whatever. But it's so I would say the art is almost ugly. Has this sort of animation, but also rotoscope sense to it. But it was just so weird and different, and nothing else looked or moved like it. That's definitely the thing with animation. When things just sort of move in ways I haven't seen anything else, like that just does a lot for me for checking something out and my enjoyment of it.
So what you would say then is that even if something is like drawn visually realistic or something like that, it needs to have some kind of stylistic hook for you to really get into it?
It's a major thing that helps me either stick around in the beginning or can ward me away from either trying it or sticking around in general. I mean, obviously, I wish I had examples of things that were generic enough that I avoided them, but they were generic and I forgot about them. My memory is not always the greatest, so having something that is so different that it makes an impression helps out a lot for me and my enjoyment of things, I guess.
I think an interesting data point for you recently was the Idaten anime.
I was really hoping you'd remember the name, because I'm like, I want to reference this, but if I don't have the name, this conversation is going to be garbage.
So that Idaten, it was a manga that I had been reading that I really enjoy, and not particularly because it has a quirky art style, but I enjoyed the story of it, and I thought the art style was interesting. So I suggested it. We watched the first episode, and you seemed to like really get into it for the first episode.
I loved the visuals. That thing, from what I remember, the stuff that show did with like color and just the way people looked and moved, it was so different. It wasn't afraid to experiment with its color palette, but not in like a very like generic but garish way. It was kind of doing its own thing. It had an almost JoJo type little bit of a flair to it, which I really appreciated.
And I'll tell you, the animation itself, they really they took it a whole lot further than the manga did, and really stylized a lot. They had like the transitions that they used were like really like bright and like flashy. Is like I don't have the proper words for it.
It's very eye-catching.
Yeah, it was. I thought they did an excellent job with the animation, especially considering the art style is sort of quirky. If you don't look at it too closely, you could say that it's not good. Like it's almost, there's not too much detail to it. But if you actually look closely at it, it is highly stylized. So, and it's very consistent.
It's a very strong word for me is stylized. I love that kind of stuff.
But that was one, I forget exactly why. I think it was in the second episode that you decided that you didn't want.
I want to say we made it 2 or 3 in, and just I hated the story so much. But the visuals is what kept me like, I'll give this a little bit more because this just looks so unique and interesting. And then like the tolerance level for the stuff it was doing was like, I can't keep going.
Could they just stop talking?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's like, you can look as flashy as you want. If you're going to monologue about me of like, here's all the ground rules from our world. Let me huff my own farts about how amazing my world building is, because I grew up watching Dragon Ball and I wanted to just at the top, just write out all of the plot holes that I didn't like about Dragon Ball having.
You know, it's funny because when I think it was like the second episode where they just info dumped like that.
Yeah.
And they went through it so quickly. And I was like, I think that's cool. It's an interesting way to just like get this out of the way. This stuff isn't that important to the story that we're doing now, but we want to make sure that it's out there. So they just like got it over with. I liked that.
I got super pissed off for it feeling so self-important that 2 episodes in, it was like, yeah, you know what? You're here for the world building of this world that we've barely gotten into yet, that already seems fairly generic. Like, that was the thing, is if it looked like it was and not the kind of more colorful over the top thing that it appeared to be, I feel like it would have been, I would have seen it more on what it was on the tin.
See, I thought that sort of the opposite of what you said, in that like they got that out of the way so that they could just, and maybe more episodes in, I actually haven't watched more of it since then, but I figured then they can just continue on and actually live in that world and explore it. So like the world building is out of the way. We're done with that. That doesn't matter anymore.
I don't know. I don't think this is the particular conversation to have that one. So I'm actually going to take this moment. Ben, we haven't heard from you. What's your weigh-in on it? Like, how much is the visuals for something important to you via the story? Let it be getting into shows or sticking around on stuff. Like, what's your feeling about it?
As with so many things in art and food and culture, I land somewhere in the middle of you guys. Though in this one, I'm more towards the Kermit end of the spectrum.
Hell yeah.
Where I would say when it comes to good or bad, there's definitely artists that have like more or less skill, but that's not really what it's about for me when it comes to comic books and manga especially. And anime, like animation skill is always going to be impressive. But when it comes to the manga, there are people like, I'm going to show my age a lot with the things I reference, but like Monkey Punch, who drew Lupin, not the world's greatest artist, but he gets his point across and he has like an authenticity and a uniqueness that like the simple images he renders are much more interesting than somebody who could maybe do it more skillfully because they just don't understand the scene he's trying to get across. And that's been a challenge for me with, and I'm sorry to like sin so early in the podcast, but like that's a challenge to me with some of the isekai anime is they do, well, because they start out as light novels and they don't have a strong visual style for a lot of them. And then they adopt a kind of like cookie cutter anime style where it's good. It's often like technically more competent than manga I like. I could say Attack on Titan. That's a more recent one. Attack on Titan, when Eren had long hair, I couldn't tell if it was Eren or Mikasa. The guy just does not do a great job of like rendering humans on a page. But I still like that because it's just this very bare bones, stripped down thing that matches his personality and his story. And so, yeah, I don't think I appreciate novelty just for novelty's sake.
Did you ever see the webcomic version of Attack on Titan?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. It's reminiscent of One Punch Man webcomic.
I was going to say, I'm surprised nobody's brought up with his work on One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100. Yeah. Like, there's something that got big because the story was so compelling. And it's like, yeah, this artist isn't good, but that's not what's important. And I feel like then when they got animated into anime, they got spiffed the hell up, but it still felt like the characters still had the spirit of one's drawings, even if they were kind of cleaned up a bunch for animation.
Right, and I think that's what it comes down to for me, is like, it's not that I don't enjoy good and interesting art and animation. I definitely do. I mean, with the Idaten one, I was like, this is really cool looking. I like this. With a lot of other ones, I'll watch it and I'll be like, the way that this is animated, the colors, everything, like I can appreciate that. But for me, this is actually going to sound a little silly later on, but for me, the story is like way more important, which, you know, given some of the stuff that I read, sounds really dumb to say, but like,
I would agree.
I would agree. That's dumb.
I would also, I've already taken the mic, metaphorically speaking. I'm going to do this call already on episode 1 as, Brad, you are known for just swilling absolute garbage. Even before you got addicted to isekais, you've been known to just drink mediocre soup, not even soup, sludge, just directly from the can, without remorse, without this is what I'm doing. I'm playing this mediocre video game and I'm 100%ing it. Is it good for me? No. There is no nutritional value in this. I'm literally just filling time.
The more is more philosophy of content.
Yes.
I'm sorry, is this an intervention?
Yes. It was always every episode.
Well, no, I think the story's fine. And that's why I say I'm somewhere in the middle because I can enjoy. Like, I liked Log Horizon. Log Horizon was one of those ones that I say would have a cookie cutter style, but it did enough to make me like it. And then the guy got busted for tax evasion, and I don't know if I'll ever see the rest of it. But it's more important to me with a graphic novel than it is with an anime. But with a graphic novel, like, you have the option of just, especially in Japan, you have the option of just writing a light novel if you don't have anything visual to add. So if you choose to make a graphic novel, you should do something that works for the material that uses the medium. Like, I'm always going to appreciate that more. It's like, you could be the most talented, I don't know, violinist, and you might be able to just play any song that's put in front of you. But if you don't really know what the song's about, you might not play it as enjoyably as somebody who really feels it.
To truly perform it, where it like kind of resonates with it. And sometimes I feel like I guess we'll go to manga more because that's what you're talking about. My brain's thinking. It's like sometimes it can just be like the art is serviceable enough to communicate the story, and if the story is strong enough, it'll still be a good time. And sometimes I feel like it's just like it resonates, and it's just like this, the way that the art style is makes everything better. And especially with a manga where you don't have like timing is done visually through you looking at frames and turning pages. I know we have all read Spy Family, which that art is incredible. And I think because of the way that the art is and how everybody looks, like it's such a unique, it's still obviously very like manga anime, but it's very much got its own feeling to it. And I feel like it adds to what makes that manga so great. And then when you get like, you know, the king of things for manga and anime of like being able to do art is like a good reaction face can make or break a punchline.
Yeah.
And I feel like, here's the bridge we can do is that different genres I feel like benefit and opposite benefit from more interesting art styles. Like I feel like in a comedy you're going to get a lot more kind of quirky off the wall kind of stuff.
That is true. There's definitely something to be said where the story can be missing something important if the visuals aren't there to support it.
Well, and I am a hypocrite in this regard because I have never read One's webcomics.
Yeah, neither have I. I've seen some of the images, but
I've seen the images.
I've only seen it immaculately animated for television on what is seemingly like a movie budget.
You know, that's really interesting you say that because I have also never actually read the webcomic, even though I'm just sitting here saying that the story is more important. And I think the story of One Punch Man is amazing.
Like, but goddamn, there's a limit.
I'm just reading the Murata manga when it comes out. It's like, but that is also one where the visual, the art style and everything is impeccable. So it's also like, I sort of don't want to spoil it.
Well, and that is a nice example though, because there is a story there where Murata like involved himself in that project because he was passionate about it.
Yeah. Like literally going, hey, I really like what you're doing with this. Can I draw it? Like that's, I mean, one actually like did interviews about this and everything, but like, you just got to think like if you're a writer or something and someone comes along that you are so enamored with already and is like, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to be involved with it. Like just, he must have just like for days just been on cloud nine.
Something popped into my head, and Ben got at it a little bit earlier, but I think one of the reasons that I like a vibrant art style and I really don't like generic ones is I have a hard time a lot of time keeping track of characters, especially their names, and if everybody looks really samey, like that's the real thing with like if art is actually like bad functionally, where it's like I can't always keep track of how many characters are here, what do they look like, who's speaking at any given moment. Like sometimes something can just be hard to read by virtue of like it takes me a moment to figure out the flow of action or who's speaking, or again, like just I'm bad at remembering faces and things like that. So when something's it's why I like things that are very stylized, that everybody has a really particular look. So I love anime in general because people got crazy colorful hair, and for me that is an easy identifier for me to remember people. And if we've got a whole bunch of like, here's the kid with brown hair in a student uniform. Here's the kid with different brown hair. This kid's got black hair. Oh, this girl has blonde hair. That's interesting. But like none of the design, like I don't remember them. I get them confused. I forget what their character bits are. You know, we take a week off in between before we watch the next episode, and it's just like I don't remember who these people are anymore. I've forgotten these story bits. So like I need that extra like, here's freaking this character. They've got this crazy hairstyle. They wield this crazy weapon that no one else has anything similar to. Like, I think that's why I've always, even just at a baseline, gravitated towards cartoons and even more towards, like, the more crazy art stuff, especially with an anime, because I just remember it better. It helps me keep track of things better because it's so different than life, and every character is so different and easily memorable and discernible.
It's really interesting you say it because it actually gave me a bit of a revelation here where I think that our differences of opinion on this come down to how we consume this particular media. Because
do tell.
So just to give this is the first episode, so I have to let everybody know that I am completely and fully addicted to reading manga.
You said it, not me.
To the point where I read, 10 plus chapters of various series every day.
What was your number back in the day before the number got messed up on Manga Dex?
Oh, yeah.
Because it kept growing every week when we were remote. Every week it was how much bigger has this number gotten of his read list?
It was over 700, I want to say.
I was going to say over 300. Jesus Christ.
No, you clearly forgot about it. I remember it going above 500 being a big deal.
I think, but that's what it comes down to is like, I am reading so much stuff. And it's interesting you talk about like the characters have to look different, because I can tell you half of the stuff that I read, the characters look exactly the same. Not in the same series, but across different series. Because like generic anime protagonist, you can only draw so many different ways.
Pisses me off so much. Anytime I see generic anime boy, I go, F off. I'm not doing this. I don't like you. You are not me.
So the thing is like, if I cared a lot about the art style, like to your level, or maybe even to Ben's level, I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to consume my trash the way that I want to.
If I cared, I couldn't consume trash.
That said, I will say you are spot on about like keeping track of people, because a lot of times if one of the ones that I'm reading only comes out once a month, or there's a hiatus for a while or whatever, I have to go back and read the previous chapter to sort of like get back to like what the heck is going on, who are these people, because there's so many that I can't actually remember all of them all the time. There's definitely like 100 or more that if you just said it in front of me, I would be like, oh yeah, this is what happened, because I do get invested in a lot of them. But then the other 600 or however
50
many
billion
I'm just consuming because I want my dopamine.
Put the glasses on. Consume.
So I think, you guys are much more
Discerning.
like, what are you actually going to consume?
I just wonder, after 700, how many, like, if I just put a random isekai in front of you that you'd never seen before, could you just tell me start to finish what happens in it?
Could you find a random isekai he hadn't read?
That would be the challenge.
So
yeah.
first you'd have to find one.
Yeah,
but like
not joking. That's like, I know it's really easy to hyperbolize, but like genuinely, I don't know how we as lay people between Ben and I could find one he hadn't read.
Like if I showed you the cover, you'd instantly recognize, okay, this is a villainous one. And
well, that I could probably do. The thing is that the way that isekai works, you would actually be hard pressed to fully flesh out the story and what's going on just by a simple synopsis, because what isekai is a shortcut framework for an author to put a story on top of.
yeah.
Is this our bridge into the Professor Isekai Sensei-Sama segment?
We can't. There's basically, when I think of anime and manga that are generic, it's isekai and slice of life.
Cute girls doing cute things.
The thing is like,
But they just seem like cookie cutter every season, just more.
I think what happens is when you are not a over consumer like I am, you get a very small subsection of what's out there when you look at any particular genre. And so it's very easy to sort of look at it and go, oh, these are all the same in this way. Whereas when you just go into the deep end on this stuff, you really start to see all the nuances of the way that you can put these things together and how it's really just a foundation. So there's definitely samey ones out there, and I read those samey ones.
I'll get crucified for this, but when I see That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime and the other one that's like, I'm a spider, screw you.
I'm like, a spider, F off.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, that one's a slime and that one's a spider. I spotted the difference.
You know what? Maybe I'll do this. That's a perfect example, because on the one hand, you have this power fantasy. Actually, that's not a good way to go about it, because both of them are actually power fantasies. But on the one hand, you're doing this nation building power fantasy on that time I got reincarnated as a slime, where the protagonist starts out and sort of gets a power boost right away and then starts building their nation. And the story is, how do they protect everyone that they love in their nation in this hostile world?
But how many times can I reread Dragon Quest Let's Do It Again? And not just because it's a slime, but I feel like Isekai is so just like, Japan loves their JRPGs. The simpler and more rote, the better. They love that to pieces. And I feel like that's what Isekai is. What if I could be the protagonist in Dragon Quest, and then I get to save the princess and have these wacky characters that come with me, but also I grinded a bunch so I'm over-leveled, and here's this generic fantasy town, and that one, and there are the elves, and that dwarf has an axe, and it's just so... It's been done 1 billion times across many nations over hundreds of years across literature and TV and music and video games and... Sweet JC, how is this having this big renaissance now in Japan? Like, what do they love about medieval fantasy so much?
I will step in. I will step in for Brad here and say that, like, I do understand, like, you can compare any two things at like 1,000-foot view, and if they're from the same genre, it's much easier to do because, like, I have often had to defend, like, no, they're not all the same melodic folk metal band. This one uses a hurdy-gurdy, and this one uses the bagpipes.
That's so different.
No, but I do know, like, when you get into a genre and you appreciate like the nuanced differences.
But that's what I'm saying is that you. Oh my God, we're so far off topic. Anyway,
why not? That's why.
What you're doing is when you have that central piece of the generic JRPG in a fantasy medieval setting, you have a base that so many people can relate to that you can then build something more intriguing off of.
It's like a meme, so you don't have to lay the groundwork
Exactly.
of establishing. Like, you can just you know what's going on here. So now let me tell you what's different.
I guess it's I have picked. Hi, welcome to Andrew Kermit's little psychology into my own brain corner. I have never liked medieval fantasy, and it has always been the thing that is usually the most popular. And as we've already seen I have an easier time keeping track of people when they are interesting and not generic. Sometimes when you're on the outs for a very long time, you get really annoyed about what is in. And I wouldn't say it's a hipster, but there is a certain punk aspect of like raging against this thing that you don't like that everybody else enjoys. And by everybody else, I mean they're making it in 700 plus different books and whatnot. And it's just like, I don't get it. Like, there's a certain amount of frustration of like, I don't understand why this is so compelling to so many people that it's just this giant column.
Oh, believe me,
of this.
I have my old man thing of like, remember when manga was good? Remember when Akira, Battle Angel Alita, and Ghost in the Shell were coming out?
I mean, there's still, like, I don't want to be like, there's still fantastic manga. There's always been, of the time, popular drivel. It's just, of anything, not just manga, that falls away, and we'll remember the stuff that was amazing. I mean, we've been reading recently, I was just talking about Spy Family. I've been reading, Kaiju number 9 or something. I know it had a season of anime, but, like, the Jujutsu Kaisen manga is incredible. Sakamoto Days, like, there's, like, a bunch of, like, I feel like we're in a new renaissance of really incredible manga that's like a lot of those are like doing their own thing and they're really neat. They have a new voice. It doesn't feel like it's just chasing something else that was popular before.
I'm not specifically disagreeing with this because there is definitely a lot of really good stuff now. But I think the trap we fall into is we look at the entire landscape and go, look how much crap there is. But the thing is there's 7 billion people in the world. Like, it's not strange that there's tons and tons of content.
Somebody needs to make the crap, and somebody needs to eat it.
Right.
And
I'm trying.
They always were making the crap. But, like, there's
just more now, and I know about it more.
The stuff that we remember is the good stuff because it was good.
Well, it's also, there's two factors. There's the way more people are making way more content in general because it's easier than ever to buy an art tablet and ink and
to record a podcast and just
Yes, correct.
But there's also then the market has changed so much. Like, when I was a kid, the idea that half the wall in Barnes and Noble would be manga, like specifically Japanese import comics, not just all comics, Japanese import comics is insane. So every little thing is getting translated, and then you've got these like scanlators and fan subbers who are just falling over themselves to get the next.
Please support the official release.
Yeah.
Or your, scanners and dubbers if there isn't an official release, because they gotta operate. I guess I'd ask the question, but I already know the answer is basically, have you ever gotten lucky that the thing you like was the thing that caught on? And the answer is yes. You like Isekai, this power fantasy, and it caught on, and you have it in spades. I finally got like a tiny glimpse of that to exit anime world for a little bit when Gravity Falls was really popular, and now every show that Disney makes, there's a certain dynamic from that show that pops up in all of them now. Yeah. And finally, it's like the thing that I like, and there's like the weird mystery aspect of the thing that I like is now the thing that is the tastemaker. And that never, ever, ever happens. I'm always on the things that are on the outs of the niche, of the weird, and to even this tiny little morsel, it was like, I get it. But I read it more of like, I finally got my little moment after being on the out of the thing that is popular is never the thing that's my thing. Well, and to finally have your number come up is just like...
I can confirm that you're not a hipster then, because you would have immediately disavowed Gravity Falls as soon as it became popular if you were a hipster.
No, it's not that it's not that something is popular and I dislike it. It is that I don't get it, and then it explodes and you feel like a crazy person. And then that kind of ups your dislike of it, because you're just like, well, I didn't get it the first time and everybody loves it. And I don't see what everybody thinks this is the second coming for, when I can put my hand behind me and just start like, look at all these other crazy things that came out that I love, that are incredible, that aren't like, I want freaking Chainsaw Man. I haven't brought up Chainsaw Man. Like, I want that anime to explode. And I think it can. And I'm rooting for it, and I'm hoping for it, that it is going to become the big thing next year or whenever it's coming out. Because we all read that manga, and it was like, was that the best manga I've ever read? No. Was it one of the most like, holy crap, I'm happy I read this and I experienced it? Yes. And it's like those little special little nuggets that isn't just the like, okay, here's another story. I guess there's some compelling things. Like, I've never seen anything really like that before. Like, those are the things, they're my babies, and I want them to succeed. And they don't usually blow up, but that's what's important to me.
Sucking the air out of your room.
No, I gotta tell you.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for, okay? Because I can tell you from my vast amount of isekai experience that when something becomes overly popular, you can lose yourself in just a sea of mediocre crap.
I want to ask a potentially controversial question. Do you think isekai is a genre? Like making a good comic is hard, no matter what genre it is. And there are good isekai, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier to make a bad isekai than it is to make like a bad shonen battle manga?
Okay. So I think, I guess the Ask Isekai Sensei-Sama
I'm asking Isekai Sensei-Sama.
Is not going to be a separate segment this time. We're just going to do it right here. I touched on this a little bit before. Isekai can be a genre. Like, it does incorporate, a wide variety of things. So, like, if you were to compare it to another genre, like, well, no. So what I should say is it's a subgenre. It would be classed under probably fantasy. So you have these overarching...
This is like sci-fi, space opera?
Yeah, something like that. The thing is, and space opera does this as well, underneath that, there are endless sub-genres. And you might not even call them subgenres at that point, but just certain themes that tend to get mixed together. Like what I said earlier is, what happens is you use that as a base. It's a jumping off point that your general audience already has some concept of, And isekai, especially if you're doing the, here was a Japanese person who got reincarnated after getting hit by a truck, or fell through a hole into another world, or fell asleep at their desk and woke up in another world, or was summoned as a hero to another world, or put on a VR headset and went into another world. Like, that's your jumping off point. And what it does is it allows your audience to go, I understand how this person thinks because they were similar to me in my own world, and now they're in this other setting. So their base knowledge is very similar to mine. It allows you to put your audience in that space very easily without having to set up a whole bunch of stuff beforehand, which is why in every single isekai, the person immediately goes to the other world. You've got like 10 panels max of Japan.
Because they know, but that's working under the purview that you resonate with that person, which is one of the reasons I don't like isekai.
Well, right, you have to, I mean, for most isekai, if not all at this point, you have to have that baseline knowledge of Japan.
I'm a nerd and or shut-in. I went out the one time and I pushed somebody out of the way and I saved them from the car, and then the truck killed me instead. And even though I lived as a complete garbage human my entire life doing nothing, this little bit I did before I die, now I get all of my just rewards in the next life. Like, yeah.
Well, see, that goes into the other tropes that you can use with that, which is, you know, your overpowered protagonist. It becomes the power fantasy. But there's so many other ways that plays out. Just the short list that I was able to come up with, you have, you know, your hero summoning, which could also be mixed with the overpowered protagonist trope. You've got harem, where all of a sudden this person who never had a girlfriend when they lived in Japan
is now drowning in women.
Right.
Because that's going to be healthy.
Another one that comes up all the time is the villainous one, where the girl who played the
Otome games,
right, the visual novel, is transported into that, but she's the villainous character, and so she has to figure out, should she actually be the villainous or should she change it up? And if she changes it, is the game going to try and put it back to how it was? You know, you've also got slow life isekai, where the person, you know, when they lived in Japan, they worked for a black company and they worked all the time and they overwork themselves to death. And so when they wake up in this new world through one of the means of transference,
of isekaiing,
now they're going to live their slow life because they don't want to overwork themselves again. And the thing is there's actually one more, which is the suffering trope, which I'm not too big on, but it seems to be very popular recently.
Oh, do tell. I don't know about this.
So that's something like the beginning of Shield Hero, or there's another one
I mean, I suffered watching that episode of Shield Hero.
Yeah, there's another one called Redo of Healer that came out recently, where it's basically like a really horrible thing happens to the protagonist, either for just the beginning or for a longer amount of time. And then most of the time it turns into some kind of revenge fantasy.
That's fun.
People are really into that now.
That's fun.
You know, I read a couple of them, but those are lower on my list, although I do really like Shield Hero because it turned away from being just suffering and revenge to actually more of a generic one, which maybe people don't like, but I enjoy it. But my point is, what happens then is you have these various tropes. You have your base of person who lived in Japan, so here's their base knowledge, goes to this other place that's unknown. And what you can do then is you can mix and match all of these different things into just what amounts to an endless amount of stories. Now, as we've seen, as we've talked about, if you look at it just at the surface level, they all look the same. But when you get into it, the variety is like off the charts. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely the same thing over and over again. There's probably 10 different series that I read that are the same as another, 50 to 100, almost beat for beat. But the fact that you have all these various tropes that you can use, it's like a chef creating a new dish. You know, you can mix these things together that you never would have thought of before. But like the base of a piece of bread or a roux or whatever, your base that you start with is the same for all of these different dishes.
Oh yeah, I've had like 100 different hamburgers, and they're all different.
Well,
And some are more delicious than others.
Right. It's the difference between a regular cheeseburger with American cheese and lettuce and tomato versus a Buffalo Swiss burger.
Yeah, yeah.
well, this is the reason I compared it to Shonen Battle manga, because Shonen Battle manga all have the same thing. There's world as you know it, but there's one weird power everybody has, and you can work real hard to develop it. And you will eventually encounter people who use that power in creative ways, and you'll have to work harder than them to level up and get new powers, and then you'll win eventually. And it's always the same arc. It's all about like work hard and win, work hard and win. And then Isekai, there's a lot of different genres, and there are definitely standouts. The standouts to me are the ones where the characters have arcs. Because I think a lot of Isekai I've read, like if I just dip my toe in without really knowing what I'm looking at, I probably tend to stumble on the bad ones.
Well, I mean, that's most of them.
Yeah,
So-
because Isekai, it's got like a creepypasta.
Yeah.
I thought you were just gonna say creep.
No,
There's a lot of creeps.
Yeah, definitely.
I was gonna say it's got a creepypasta level of writing where it's like wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And it
You know,
just-
power fantasy is a huge central part of an isekai.
So to me, like some of them feel like there's no story. It's just like a vibe, and it's like almost I want to feel like an overpowered character for a little while. So I'm gonna read this, and then, like those are the ones where there's just like it just treads water chapter after chapter, and
Yeah.
I'm never sure where it's going.
This is maybe a little too heavy for the first episode, but I'll touch
Maybe
on it a
this-
little bit. You know, we've talked about this, but I really got into the isekai stuff during a pretty dark period of my life when I was having a lot of, you know, issues in my personal life. And that power fantasy and escapism sucked me in and allowed me to, you know, escape from that for a little while.
It's why I can't fully begrudge you on being into it because
Oh, no.
You can't fully begrudge me because I own it.
Well, you own it and you needed it, like genuinely. Like I'm gonna be empathetic on that.
Yeah, but I mean, even
went
now,
through some rough stuff, and like I can dig it.
yeah, even now when that stuff's over, which it's over, so you don't have to feel bad for me. You can if you want to. Like, I still enjoy it because I've just connected with it for some reason.
Oh, and I was going to say the other thing you could easily compare like all these isekais to is independent podcasts, because they're made for other independent podcasters.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you are not an independent podcaster and you are listening to this, please leave a comment.
Yeah, tell me how wrong I am. But yeah, it's interesting, and I just wanted to like I didn't necessarily mean to take us straight into the isekai discussion, but
I feel like it was there though.
it's when we
It's
talk
always
about
going to be there.
isekai gets so many light novels. I think that's the thing. There's so many isekai light novel to anime adaptations, and it happens with slice of life too. Those seem to be really popular light novels.
Well, both of those are genres where it's very easy for an author to get people deep into the story immediately because the author knows that everyone has this sort of base level of experience that they're going to have their protagonist have. It allows you to just dump people right into basically the middle of the story and say, you already know all of what this character knows. Now you can experience everything with them instead of having to like establish a brand new character. In a fantasy story where it's a fantasy just to start with, you have to establish all these different rules for your protagonist and say like they don't know what long distance communication is and they don't know what, I don't know, wheels are or something because they live in this place where they don't have this technology.
you don't have to establish the magic system if you can understand that your audience knows what mana is, and because this character is from our world, he knows what mana is.
Right, exactly.
So they compare it to the video game.
You get to go, here's a video game framework.
Yep.
And something that you see in a lot of isekai is that the magic system revolves around imagining the thing that you want to do. And so the protagonist gets to be super overpowered because they come from a world where imagining cool things is a normal thing to do. And suddenly they're in this world where everybody's looking at them like, how did they do that chantless magic? Ooh. And it's like, well, it's because I just imagined that fireball in my head. And everybody's like, well, for us to imagine that, we have to do this long chant that like brings the memory about or whatever. And it's like, all of these things are these shortcuts that
there have been cool things you told me about. I mean, I'm just interjecting, but like there was one where you said like they had to engrave things, and the one kid could use kanji to express it in fewer characters.
This is probably one that some people listening to this will know about. Kenjo no Majo, which is Wise Man's Grandchild, which, to be fair,
not an isekai title.
Oh, it totally is.
No, it is the name of it.
Like the long, yeah.
The title is
it would be like that time my grandfather was a mage and I was his child.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so that's actually, it was a fairly popular.
I was my grandfather's child.
I fucked that up.
You can do cool things with
uncle and his grandpa.
Like in that one, to enchant things, they have to write down the spell on the thing, basically. And because kanji can express something in much fewer characters, he was able to engrave those enchantments in a much smaller space and make things much more powerful because he can put more characters.
See, like that's like Brad, like that is akin to like this corner that we're on between the two of us, that like we could be on the same bus of loving isekai, because the thing that explicitly pisses me off about isekai is that these are nobody's given great power, but what I want is somebody who worked hard in life and then gets to take that situation into another world, and then they get to just freaking beat everybody because they did that. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of that what is it? A reincarnated in another world where baseball is war. Mm-hmm. So this like great baseball player gets reincarnated in a world where all these fantasy races essentially solve diplomacy issues with baseball. So now it's like, I get a sports manga, which I adore, in this weird fantasy setting, and here's this guy coming to this other world, and he gets to use all the knowledge he has about baseball that they don't have to help win all the games. And it's like, that's what I love. There's another one I want to read that's, it's not a manga, but it is an isekai about fencing, that like a championship fencer gets transported into another world and like uses that in whatever the story is. I really want to read it.
How have I never heard of it?
Because it's not from Japan. It's not in a manga. Somebody wrote this on Amazon.
That'll do it.
From a Reddit that I frequent. But it was just that I love that idea of this person has this skill specifically that they've honed in life, and then when they go to the other world, they get to keep that, and that is what gives them an edge. Not just this angel took pity on me and now I have XYZ, and it's just like, as someone who kind of is frustrated about that kind of a thing, it's like, no, I don't like this person. I'm actively derisive, but I like the power fantasy. I just like it when it feels earned. And that's where we kind of, this small separation between us of being on the same bus.
The thing is, though, like you just said, like you do like some isekai. So
yeah.
I don't think it comes down to like, do you like isekai or not?
I don't like the generic isekai, but also I don't like the generic, so but that's just shorten the sentence.
That's what I'm saying, is that like everything sort of looks generic on the surface for something like isekai.
Well, no, but if you sent me the pitches, this person was really good at X in life, and then like but if it's just, got hit by truck.
Right, but my point is that like those are out there, and I think the difference between us is that I spend the time reading all the crap and I get the gems out of it. And,
I don't have time for that. I'm doing 50 million other things, and I don't have time to sift through garbage.
Well, you at least enjoy the vibe of the crap. I mean, you might acknowledge that it's not like the world's greatest story, but you're like,
oh, yeah.
Again, Brad, noted trash swiller, and this has already been discussed.
And that's okay.
Yes, maybe. No. Debatable.
I think we'll be able to have plenty of long conversations about isekai on this podcast.
Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, Well, we have one more thing we need to talk about before we're out of time, which we're getting to.
So no Frieren.
It's Manga Book Club.
So something that we want to do is, we actually already touched on a whole bunch of different ones that we will talk about more in depth in the future. But we want to have a part of this where we talk about at least one specific manga or anime that we're reading or watching that we really want to get out there more. So,
or just discuss. I've been dying to talk about this, and since you shut up, can we talk about this? Gotta save it for the podcast, Kermit. Okay.
So as our, inaugural one that we're talking about is one that I've been reading for a little while, and recently was released as Volume 1 on Amazon, and I picked it up and I put it in Andrew's hands and said, "You will like this. Read it." And
I said, "I don't know. This looks like generic fantasy, but for you, buddy, I'll give it a shot." And you know what? I devoured this thing within a day's span. Could not help myself. It was the weekend, and I'm gonna read the first chapter, so I've got a little bit of a jump start while I've got time, and then I'll read the rest of it during the week closer to the day. And then I just ate it. I ate the entire thing and was like, "Is there more?" And he's like, "This one's pretty new." Not really. And I'm like, "Dang."
So, since you have it real fresh, do you want to give a little summary?
So the basic idea of Frieren is that there is a very generic adventuring party. You've got your, main hero. You've got your tough dwarf wielding an axe. You've got your kind of priest, healer, cleric guy. And you've got your, elven spellcaster. A very D&D party. We've been done it. They're just getting back from beating the final boss of the Devil King, because it's always the Devil King, and it's just I'm rolling my eyes as I'm reading all this stuff. And then it's but it's interesting that you're starting at the end, and then the story is basically about that the elf ages so much slower than everybody else, and that even though they went on this entire journey, she never really got to know them at all.
And I think it was something 10 years that they journeyed together.
Yeah, not an insignificant amount of time. And obviously you don't see any of that. Well, you don't see it before you get to the end, which is the beginning.
They do periodic flashbacks throughout.
But it's a lot about the elf as the literally decades pass by, especially after the main hero passes away.
Which they pick up. So I want to say they defeat the demon lord or whatever.
You don't even see him. They are literally, it starts with them coming back.
And then it's something 30 years, or no. Is it 80 years later? I think it is.
No, I don't think it's that far.
They'd
all be mega dead. Maybe it's here. I'll look. But it's a good chunk of time.
So what happens is they just defeated them. They jump to the hero passes away. He's the first one of that party to die at an old age. So he got to live a nice long life. And then, so they go through a little while in that period, but then they jump even further forward in time. So you end up, because I want to say at the start of every chapter, it's 32 years after the hero's passing or something.
Yeah, everything is charted off of that. And it's a lot of just her wandering, reconnecting to her other party members for a little bit, going to places they had visited, and literally just trying to find meaning in something.
Right. And so the thing that is just amazing about this is the way that it explores human emotion and connection and relationships, because the main character, Frieren, the elf, when she first joins up with the hero party, is already over 1,000 years old, I want to say. And so she's at this point where she can't really make connections with other people because they don't have long enough lifespans. Even the very long-lived dwarf only lives 300 years or something like that. And so...
Well, I love that she immediately has a hard time reckoning with the fact that to her, she spent a month working on location with these people. But to them, she was a huge part of their lives.
Right.
Yeah. That she can spend a decade on a singular task somewhere, and it's like, yeah, whatever. And like I guess a little thing of that is that she takes on a human, it's human, right?
Yeah.
Apprentice, where it's just like, yeah, you can spend a decade or however many years sitting here doing this, but like that person's clock is ticking. You've taken off, we're in Fantasyland, like an eighth of their life just futzing around this forest for however many years.
Yeah. So it really, when I started it, it really grabbed me immediately because the way that it explores how someone who really doesn't seem to have emotions learns about emotions and relationships is just so well done. And it feels very real to me.
It's very somber without being bleak.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, especially at the beginning, there's a lot of like very heavy stuff. And something I'll say to you, I guess both of you, because I'm way farther ahead than you guys, but reading the first volume, you get a whole lot of stuff all at once, and then it really spreads out. Like, they go on a journey, her and her new apprentice and some other people along the way.
Yeah.
And that journey spans, 60 chapters, like it's still going on. So, but each step of the way, there's these little bits of like how these people are connected, how the new people that she finds connect to her, and like her growth, which is sort of amazing if you think about it, because she didn't have emotional growth for 1,000 years. And then all of a sudden, in what for her amounts to a few days, she has this so much emotional growth. So one thing I will say, given that you've just started reading this, is to temper your expectations a little bit, because while I still really enjoy it and it does have those beats, it's much more spread out after the first.
As long as it can keep the emotional beats, like that's what really intrigued me. I guess tying this into our previous conversation, it doesn't feel like sometimes manga feel like the thing they're like about on the surface is also as important as what the theme is, and this very much feels like this is 100%. The trappings of the fantasy trappings feel like just a vessel to talk about these themes.
Yes, definitely.
Like One Punch Man is like that before it becomes another shonen battler, where it's just like this just happens to be the vessel for us to explore these feelings. We're not really around for like that they went on this quest and all the other normal trappings for all this. It's a, hey, you already know this stuff. We're not here for that. We're here to it feels there's no like joy of like she used the spell and she fought an orc or something. Like there's no like power fantasy like that. It's more of just exploring this, like, here's this person who lives forever, who has incredible power and is just spending their time finding weird specifically weird niche magic. It's like a history almost.
That's the important part, is that like when she battles, she uses the same spell like the whole time, but she is so obsessed with finding new magic that is super innocuous. Like magic that lets you clean a teapot, or magic that keeps you warm at night, or just like the most random things. She's
mundane
constantly
almost
seeking out these grimoires that have this very mundane magic in them. Meanwhile, she knows this super powerful spell that is the only one she uses when she fights the demons.
But also that she's trying to find this supposed, grimoire for talking to the dead so she can speak to the hero, and it's like of the idea of getting connected to people before it's too late. Like there was a lot more heavy themes than I was expecting, I guess.
Well, I will tell you, you'll probably latch onto this better than in One Punch Man. What happens is it sort of evolves into just the shonen battler kind of thing with like big battles happening constantly.
It becomes the thing it's parodying.
Yeah.
But it always has that undercurrent. Saitama is always running around in the background and will pop up at times and just sort of like pull the rug out from under the whole thing, which is what keeps the parody going. But you have to get through
more and more of its
the
bogged
battle
down
stuff. Whereas in Frieren, it does stretch out more, but like the battles are always over pretty quickly, and are mostly a small part of it, that then the relationships are on top of.
Yeah, the meanings of it. It's a thing. It's a piece of conflict, not like a major happening. It's not going to take you more than a couple panels.
I would go so far as to say that the fantasy setting of Frieren is just a straight up subversion of expectations.
Yep.
They're most, and you've said this in other words, but like Frieren is complicated because they did this a lot in Doctor Who with like the lonely god thing, where the 10th Doctor especially was constantly watching everything just decay around him, and he was kind of sick of being alive. What I like about this, they don't do that with Frieren. She's not like, she doesn't feel bad about living for so long. She doesn't have survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
She's not depressing.
It's just who she is, and she's kind of trying to understand it. And it's like you said, like she has this distorted to us sense of value in terms of like she doesn't value the big bombastic spells. She values like small little things that are meaningful on their own. And she like savors like strange moments, but at the same time she can blow 10 years just looking for mushrooms in a forest.
Yeah.
And
It's wild.
and she's not like sad or upset. She's just kind of going through like this is just life to her.
But she's trying to find a meaning. Like she's not just some, bland whatever. It's like it's her specifically and her interactions with her apprentice. You see that a lot of like her trying to find meaning. Like literally like I want to go up and do this not because it'll make me feel something, but it might.
Well, right. And the thing is like she journeyed with the hero for 10 years. And at the end of that thought, okay, that's over. I did a thing. Now it's done.
Let's come back in 50 years to watch these same stars. I'm going to go wandering for at least 100.
When she comes back, what she realizes is that 10 years did change her and planted a seed of curiosity in her that she wants to experience those things. She wants to learn about it, which then she's like, oh no, he's dead. Like,
But it would be so easy to make her that lonely god trope where she would be super sad and super mopey. I love that they didn't. And that's why I say the fantasy setting is almost a subversion, because like that's almost more a sci-fi exploration of the concept. Like she's an elf, but she could just as easily be an alien.
yeah.
Because her mindset is so different. And whoever wrote it is really trying to imagine what it would be like if you just had an extra long lifespan. Like, what would your values be?
Yeah.
And she's curious about the world and curious about shorter lived people and like how they feel and experience things. And that's what makes her likable. Like that's your gateway into relating to her, is you want to understand her and she wants to understand you. And I think that makes it way more interesting than like, I would even say I'd recommend it. This is one of the few that like transcends manga.
So
Yeah, agreed.
to that point, I actually purchased 2 copies of Volume 1, and 1 copy I gave to Andrew, which he's going to pass on to Ben so Ben can complete it because Ben's a bit behind. The other copy, my wife is currently reading, someone who is not into anime or manga at all, although she did say she wanted to try and get into anime. She watched a couple episodes of some things, but and when she's done reading it, I'm going to hand it over to my mom, because this is why we wanted to talk about this one first, and it's the most important recommendation we can give so far, because this really transcends the medium.
Well, you have to get... Okay, I'm going to be real, though. You have to get through at least the first 2 chapters, because the first 2 chapters do something that we talked about a lot rewatching through Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, where there is comedy in moments that feels very almost irritating and out of place. And then it freaking drops that and it just does its thing for the rest of it. And like when it finds its footing more, but like there was a lot of moments in the first one where it's just like, here's a really serious note and a funny joke. Haha, the priest, he does a drink. He is a drinky priest. Isn't funny. He's so tall. Corrupt priest. Ha ha ha. And it's like, guys, like we're trying to have a moment here. It's like, haha, no, funny. He's old. He's like, he's so corrupt. He drink, he take money, in it ain't funny.
Hey, Marvel took all the wrong lessons from that, because that shit's happening in every Marvel movie now.
Yeah,
we can't have a single serious moment without a Whedon-esque joke.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, though, in Frieren,
Maybe he got it from anime initially.
it is important, though, in Frieren, because it sets up, because I think we gloss over this a little bit, but the real length of the story is they're following the steps of that original journey again.
Correct.
And as she goes through these various places, goes to these villages that she was at 100 years ago or whatever it was, and sort of re-experiences things. There's flashbacks.
Yeah.
And goes and she's re-examining those moments and go in a different light now that she's, I guess, more enlightened. And so the different personalities of the priest and the hero and the dwarf are much more important when you get to those set pieces.
I think what you're saying is correct. I just don't think this author is very good at humor.
No,
because it feels like old anime humor where it's like, haha, this guy's bombastic, he's weird. You don't expect the priest to be like.
It's been too long since I read the first couple chapters, but I like the humor in it.
It got better. Like after it stopped doing that, like every couple of panels because the priest was still present. After that, it was like when those little moments came up, like, oh, this is nice. But in the beginning, it was just like, we specifically talked about this in something else recently, and I was like very on. Not that I was going into it on alert, but I was very more receptive and sensitive to that stuff of like, okay, guys, I get it. Wacky, zany anime. Ha, ha, ha. There's some cool things going on. Can we pay attention to those? And then it does. For as much as I love Japanese culture and the Japanese language, I don't like Japanese humor. I mean, it's not even just the author. Like, I just culturally, it does not click for me very often. I have laughed at certain things, but like, the only anime I have genuinely laughed at within the last 10 years is Jujutsu Kaisen. I was going to say Jujutsu Kaisen is so funny.
That is definitely a masterclass.
And that's got so much Western influence.
I was going to say it's almost probably because it's more my culture's humor than a traditional Japanese one.
Cromartie High was really good.
I haven't seen that.
That one I feel like when they can when it's like, it's not like wacky zany comedy where it's a lot more like thought out stuff. That one was.
And we will be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, maybe in 3 episodes.
I will reread chapters to be able to better talk about this stuff from the beginning.
Depending on how this plays out, who listens to it and likes it, we'll change some things up.
Let's not bite too much off.
Yeah.
There was one scene in Frieren I just wanted to mention.
Sure.
And I feel like I could have read too much into it. So, Andrew, you'll have to tell me if this actually happened. There is a scene where she goes to a village and they have a statue of the hero. And she looks at the statue and like in the art, she looks at the way the people look at the statue with like her half-lidded thing, like her half-lidded gaze she looks at everything with. She's always like very like nonplussed by everything.
Yeah.
And I like read into that she was like analyzing how they had honored this dude and how like his memory had lived on and how all these people like didn't even know him, but he means so much to them. And I don't know. That was a little bit of like, and the art for Frieren is not super stylized or unique.
No, it's somewhat generic, although they go real heavy on the backgrounds.
But I feel like they use the generic character designs in a way that like they're still communicating a lot visually.
Yeah.
Like, and I could be reading too much into like that look she gave the statue.
No,
but like,
I'm there with you. You get that feeling of like, that's what I love about this is you get this feeling of time of, this was important enough that they built a statue of it and people still care about it, but it's kind of fallen in disrepair because there's just not as many people who are still alive who remember him and value him. And that's why it's interesting that she shows up and cleans the statue with one of her weird spells that she got, her little niche spells. And I think that's neat. Yeah, read Frieren, like genuinely.
Yes.
As someone who you could hear me for the last, however long the episode will be cut down to, railing against a lot of things that it is. On the surface, I really loved it, and I'm really excited to read volume 2.
Yeah, and don't be scared of it just because we talked about how, emotional and everything it is. It's got some levity to it, but it's also just an interesting journey that they go on. So I believe the next volume is coming out sometime in January, and then the third one is, I think it's January, February, March for the first. What is it? I think the first 5 are coming out.
Hooray for me. I get to read more then.
So
Invest in Frieren, kids. It's going to be big.
We'll see. We might talk about it again after a couple more volumes come out.
Yeah, check back in.
But like I said, I'm pretty far along. I've really enjoyed it the entire time. So, yeah, definitely number 1 recommendation. And we'll have some more recommendations on the next episode. Or just one, depending on how this all works out.
We're still figuring out the structure of this
Depending
thing.
on how strongly I recommend it is how long it will take.
So, with that said, I think we're well over our time now. So, thanks for listening. If you have been, which I hope you have been, pay attention if you have this turned on.
Well, you're going to be
Seriously.
chiseling the statue out of the marble we've created.
Yeah, we'll see. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, definitely subscribe or follow on whatever platform you like to use that you're listening to this on. If you're listening to this on YouTube, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Drop a comment.
Yeah, definitely like, comment, and subscribe.
Leave a 5-star review on iTunes. And Podchaser. Make 2 accounts.
That said, if you're not listening to us on YouTube, definitely check out our YouTube channel because we also do unboxing, which is we get a monthly subscription box of Japanese snacks called Boxu, and we unbox it and we talk about it, and we have a lot of fun making those. So definitely check those out and like and comment on those too. All of the social media things, do them. Oh, and that YouTube channel is That Time I Got Reincarnated as an Anime Podcaster. But you can find links to those things in the description of the podcast or on YouTube. So check that stuff out. We got a couple plugs here. We'll start with Ben, who is our resident professional podcaster.
Oh, I don't get paid. I have another podcast and a Twitch channel, both called Words About Books. If you like reading books or if you just like hearing somebody describe them to you, check it out.
I like to listen to Words About Books because I don't want to read books.
That's a valid way to consume Words About Books.
And I will say it's an excellent podcast. I listen to it every week, and Ben and his co-host Nate do an excellent job of outlining the different books and talking about the various themes. I definitely recommend it. And if you watch him on Twitch, he needs more followers, so do that.
I do. We're on the road to 50.
Woo!
Make an affiliate.
Andrew, you got some stuff you want to plug?
You can find me wherever you get your podcasts at Ramble Rousers. It's just kind of a podcast. We talk about different topics. Sometimes I interview my friends. Sometimes Weebs Club is on it. I think the last episode we did was about copyrights. Another sort of creative idea thing. So I'm not sure when we'll do another of those. That's very much a thing that I update when I get struck with a flash of, let's record something. So, subscribe to it so you can get a random gift one day in the future.
If you enjoyed this conversation that we had at all.
Oh, 100%, yes.
Definitely check that out because I think we've done 3. Is that right?
At least. And there's some other ones with some other people.
Not necessarily specifically anime or manga, but various philosophical things, and we have fun making those too.
Very, very free range podcast feed. Just kind of whatever I'm working on that strikes my fancy gets tossed in there. So.
Oh, and that recent episode you released with your director friend Josh, I want to say.
Yes. That I recorded a year ago and then finally got around to editing.
But that was really good. I enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I got to start those up again.
You have a YouTube channel?
No, I mean I did, but I don't remember what it's called.
No.
I think it's called Kermit. I think it's just called Kermit the Grog. On YouTube, and similar to the podcast feed, whatever random little video bits and bops I've been working on. So
you can also find some of Andrew's stuff on Keeping Friendship Magic, right?
Yes, my friend Forward Progress runs that. If we're continuing this, so go check out that. He does similar, and he's been on a couple times before of talks about other pop culture things, but usually with a little bit more of a psychological, scientific eye to them.
And his stuff is also really good, and there's a link to that on our YouTube channel.
Dig it.
So I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you guys did too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to do this again. Not sure how often these will come out, but I had fun with this, and we have so many topics that we want to talk about. So once again, thanks for listening. And remember, if you get hit by a truck and end up in another world, have fun with it.